Well, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
And I'm excited because we got to the end. This is the first time we actually got through all the Rashi and all the text of a particular parsha. And this is vaYigash that we got to the end. And here we got one day left in the week. And so I'm going to do a little bit of Torah Temima this morning, which I hope you'll enjoy very much and understand. It just gives you another dimension of how you can take these texts and explore them in different kinds of ways. Another thought that I had is to what degree, in some ways, the discipline that we're practicing is in a way trying to give us a taste of what the afterlife might be. That it's a little taste of what immortality might be about, and to be able to be in this dimension of studying and thought and spirituality, and that we actually get to experience it a little bit. So having said all of that, I'm going to turn to the screen share, and we're going to go back somewhat to the beginning of Parshat vaYigash and to the very first Torah Temima commentary here. So this is this, and we've dipped into this from time to time, not very often, but if you enjoy this, if you find it stimulating and interesting, I'd be happy. It's a challenge for me as well, but I'd be very happy to explore this with you as we get to the end of the Rashis in the parshas that we're doing. So it may be a while before we can actually do this consistently, but here we go. So we're already into the parsha. We're into verse 3 here, and it's where, remember, Judah has told basically Joseph to take Judah instead of Benjamin, so that they can return Benjamin to his father. And at this point, Joseph reveals himself to the brothers. And it says about their reaction, "V'lo yachlu." So we'll see if we can find the entire verse here. Let's see here. "V'lo yachlu echav." His brothers were not able to la'anot oto, to respond to him, to answer him. Ki nivhalu mipanav, because they were scared. Right? They were taken aback from his presence. So that's what we're commenting on. And there's this statement that Baruch Halevi Epstein is taking material from all over the rabbinic sources, and this is one that he's taking. This is the source, Chagiga, the tractate Chagiga, chapter 4, verse Mishnah 2. There's no Talmud on this. It's strictly a Mishnah. And this is what is said there. Rabbi Elazar, Kimate lahaikra, when he would arrive at this scriptural verse, So when he was studying, he'd get to this verse, Heve bachi, he would cry. He would burst into tears. He would be utterly moved. Amar, this is what he said. Uma tochacha shel basar vatam. And if in a case of a rebuke of a mortal, basar vatam, flesh and blood, ketiv ba, it's written regarding a mortal's rebuke, Joseph's rebuke, v'lo yachlu echav la'anot oto, and it says that his brothers were not able to respond to him. Ki nivhalu mipanav, because they were so frightened, they were taken aback from his presence. Tochacha shel hakadosh baruch. Excuse me. Please make sure you're muted. Just check and make sure, please. Tochacha shel hakadosh baruch hu. When we are corrected, when we are rebuked by the Holy One, blessed be He, alachat kama v'chama. How much the more so. So if Joseph could set his brothers back like this, imagine what it'll be like when God confronts us with the truth about ourselves. And there's some questions that lay buried in this particular statement, besides the main point that's being made. And what I love about what we're about to read is that Rabbi Epstein, the Torah Temima, takes on these questions. So here, this is Baruch Halevi Epstein's own response and discussion about this passage that he just shared with us. Midrashim and in the Midrashic material, this is stated in this particular frame. It's framed in this way. Oy lanu biyom hadin. Woe to us from the day of judgment. Oy lanu biyom hatochacha. Woe to us from the day of correction, of rebuke. So, excuse me 1 second. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to clear my throat.
Well, I'm thinking about this, that like if you're like a committed atheist, right? And you don't feel you have a reason to, I mean, they may, whatever reason to
Right.
feel the need to be a good person and to think about, decisions ethically. I'm not saying atheists don't do that, because a lot of them do. But the thing is, if you pretend, like, what if there is a God? And what if I'm facing this God and I have to account for my life, and that God has power over judging and rewarding or punishing me? And how would I feel if I think about my life and there's this and this and this? Well, I can justify this. I have had this problem and this problem, and so it's natural that I had a harder time, and you could have all kinds of rationalization and justification, but then you have a supreme person saying, well, did you really have to do that despite this? And and it's really a hypothetical cross-examination, in a way that if you pretend that there's a huge meaning to it, and if you have some feelings about how you might come off, whether or not you believe it or not, those feelings are telling you something.
Right.
They're telling you, well, maybe don't rationalize so much, and maybe be more considerate about everything that you have done in the past and everything that you are doing in the present and the future. Whether or not you believe it or not, you can get to that feeling. As if it matters in this hypothetical situation, why wouldn't it matter, at all?
Okay. So, I mean, I think you're saying a lot here. And I'm hearing you echoing what's being said here, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I'm understanding where you're coming from on this. Yeah, I understand that when we speak about God, or when we speak in this way, we're depending a lot on metaphors. Okay. I mean, even when we speak about God, we're speaking metaphorically. Because I think what I understand is the religious outlook that certainly Judaism, but I suspect perhaps all religions take into account, is what is our relationship to the universe. So whether you want to speak in terms of a supernatural, entity, being, whatever, first of all, I think there's some rational reason to consider that. But beyond that, the idea that our life, what it's doing is it's allowing us a window or an ability to look at our lives in an extremely significant kind of way, and to make the assumption that there is some deep purpose for each and every one of us to be here, and that the very fact that we're given life, to look at life itself, and consciousness and awareness and intelligence and emotion as great abilities, gifts, if you want to say, blessings, and to not take these things for granted, and to say, okay, given the fact that I am given such a precious uh, blessing as this life that I have, regardless of whatever problems we have to face, but that just simply looking at life as life, and that whole experience, what do I accomplish here? What am I here for? And if you start to use that kind of measure, one doesn't have to always use God talk to understand life in that particular way. And the point that you make about atheists, that atheists aren't necessarily libertarians. They certainly don't feel they can do whatever, that they aren't answerable to humanity and to the universe, whether they articulate it or they don't. But that's essentially what we're talking about here. And it's an essential part of, I believe, the religious examination of one's life. And I can see tremendous, value, looking at life as something of great value, and respect and appreciation and all those kinds of things. So if I may, let me go on a little bit more on this, Lauren, but if you'd like to respond to if I'm responding to you appropriately, let me know. And if you want to add anything, I want to give you that opportunity. Did you want to add anything else?
No.
But thank you. So here we go. So we just had this little thing where he's quoting the Midrashim, which are saying, woe when we have to give account for our lives, right? Yosef, this is going on. Yosef katan shebishvatim haya. Joseph was the smallest of the tribes, right? He was the youngest at the time when he was born. Velo hayu yecholim echav, or I think I'm trying to think, achiv la'amod betochachto. And yet his brothers were not able to resist, right, or to stand up against his correction. And this is all in the Midrashim. Dichtiv, because it's written, velo yachlu achiv la'anot oto, ki nivhalu mipanav. That's the entire verse. For his brothers were not able to respond to him because they were so frightened, right? They were so taken aback from his presence. Ukashiyavo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and when the Holy One, blessed be He, comes, v'yochiach l'chol echad ve'echad, and is going to correct and rebuke every individual, alachat kama v'chama. How much the more so? Ad kan. And that's the end of the quote. So he's quoting, Baruch Halevi Epstein is quoting how this is stated. The statement he just made up here, he's saying how often it's reformulated in the Midrashim. Now comes the interesting part. V'nir'eh b'shenidaktek b'klal she'ilat Yosef ha'od avichai. And it would appear that when we examine in general this question that he asked, right before we have this verse, right, the brother's reaction, Joseph's question, ha'od avichai, is my father still alive? Ma she'ela hayuza. What exactly was he asking? This question that is quoted in the text, he says to them after he says, I am Joseph, is my father still alive? What? Why was he asking this question? V'halo mikol hemshech divreihem atu ito. Sorry. And from all, if you look at the conversation that they had with him, Ra'ah, he would have seen v'yada ki Yaakov chai. He would have known that Jacob was alive. They told him. Why would he ask, is his father still alive, if they've already told him that? V'gam ma shayachut, and here it goes even deeper, right? And again, okay, v'gam, and also ma shayachut she'ela zo le'omro ani Yosef. What relationship, right, does this question, is my father still alive, what relationship does it have when he says, I am Joseph? What does the one question have to do with this statement? And for this reason, now that we're raising these issues, we could say, amar ha'od avichai, that when he asked them this question, when he said to them, is my father living, still alive? Sorry, I have to be able to read this. It's as if he is, as it were, surprised, right? And saying, ha'omnam, is this in fact the truth? Ha'omnam haya bo koach, was it possible for him, that is for his father, to have the inner strength, lisbol masa yegono, to be able to carry, to bear the burden of his grief, v'tza'aro, and his pain, me'avodati ad she'od chayhu, from the time of my loss, so that he is still alive. Was it possible for Dad to be able to live after this heartbreak, after his heart was broken, when he heard that I had died? That's what they told him. So in other words, he's simply saying, wow, was it really Dad? Was Dad able to really do that? Vehine b'ma'at dvarim elu. And here in this brief little statement of his, dai lahem, it was enough for them, laha'achim, for the brothers, lakut bifnehem al kol hama'aseh, that to become upset. I mean, it would really turn them into themselves and to become upset when he asked them that question. How is Dad able? In other words, he was saying, is Dad really alive? Was it really possible for him to overcome his grief? So and of course, who caused him the grief, right? Asher asu, which they had committed, right? He knew they committed it, right? They did it to him in his face. That is Joseph. And in just simply saying, is Dad still alive? He's saying to them, is it still possible for someone to go through such unbearable grief and survive? And I can tell you that in my experience as a rabbi, I've seen people die of heartbreak. I've seen it happen. Umevoar b'divrehem elu, right? And it becomes clear in their words, right? Or these words, omnam hochicham, that in fact, so in these words, it is in fact hochicham, that he was correcting them, he was rebuking them, tochachat nimritza, a powerful admonition, a reuya lasot, which was capable, lasot seret benefesh, which is capable of, literally it means putting a wound into one's soul, achayevet ba, for one who had committed such an act. Bedok, and that's like QED. So he's analyzed this little statement, Ha'od Avi, Avinu Chai, is my father still alive? And he's explained, Torah Temima has explained the power of that statement and deconstructed it for us in this amazing kind of way.
Well, I can't help but think of, the song, that says Od Avinu Chai in it, because it's referring, he's referring to his father. Well, his father is our, considered one of our patriarchs.
Right.
So it's our father too.
Yes.
And we're saying, even though, yes, now literally none of them is, physically alive, but we are saying, yes, our fathers are still alive. And that statement that comes there just kind of brings that to mind, and I probably deliberately, but I mean, I know that song is later, but
right. And it's also referring, I believe, to King David, right?
Yes.
I think, or maybe not. It's just saying Am Yisrael Chai. So no, you're right, because it's saying Am Yisrael. And of course, I've always thought of it as the people of Israel, but here we were thinking of, as they say in Hebrew, Yisrael Saba, which means Israel grandpa, meaning Yisrael Jacob.
Right.
So it could well be, you're right, Lauren. I think you're totally right that is a reference to that statement of Joseph. Although I don't think in this song it's supposed to be a correction, right? I think in there it's supposed to be a statement of success and celebration.
Well, you never know whether it was conscious or not. With Jews, they're always correcting people. So,
well, this is true.
Or we're talking about maybe national pride, but also, if we're proud, we have to act in ways that would make us proud.
Right. And I'm taking it a different way. You're right. I mean, it just occurred to me that it's saying, despite all our sins, all our misdeeds, etc., we still are surviving. Right. And it's taking, Israel Saba, right? Israel grandpa being alive metaphorically to mean, that despite all the history and the bad history as well, we still survive. And in a way, it might be of gratitude to God's kindness. I don't think the song was intended to go in the direction that I'm sharing, but it's certainly possible, at least given, what we've just read about the statement of Joseph's. So,
And there's always the, stated intention and the not conscious, motivations for writing something.
yes, of course, right. Is the work of the artist, does the work of the artist transcend the artist? So regardless of what the artist had in mind, does the artist's work actually transcend their understanding and their intentions? That's a great philosophical question. Going on.
I am just loving this conversation.
Yeah, so this Baruch Levi, I mean, this is why Torah Temima has its place. There's so many commentaries, but Torah Temima has a really good place in the tradition as to its value. So let's go on. He's not finished. He goes on quite a bit, just down to here. So let's hope we can get that done in the time we have remaining. But al derech hapshat, and if we just simply look at this conversation, right, in a straightforward kind of way, without looking into yesh lekaven ta'am hashela, we could actually understand, right, a reason for this question: Ha'od avichai, is my father still alive? In other words, if we sort of look at the circumstances and look at it from the nature of the conversation itself, analyze the conversation itself. And here is his analysis. He acharei sha'ara, because after Joseph saw shekachashu lo, that they lied to him, that the brothers lied to him, b'mitziut shelo, with regards to his existence, right, his reality. In other words, when they were talking, they didn't know they were talking to him, and they talked about a brother, right? Shel Yosef, that's of Joseph. He's just clarifying that. She'amru alav, because the brothers said regarding him, shehu mate, that he had died. Remember, they didn't say they killed him, or they didn't say they sold him into slavery. They didn't tell him that. They told him he died. They didn't know for sure, but they said to him, declaratively, he died. Moshe katav Rashi, and as Rashi notes, Beresh Parsha Zo, at the beginning of this section, and I think this means chapter 20, Shahaya lahem ta'am bazeh, that they had, unless it's verse 20, that they had a certain amount of reason. There was a rationale for them to say that Joseph was dead. Okay. Shuv, in other words, they felt so guilty. That's why they did it. I'm going to imagine that's the reason. In other words, and of course, they'd never heard from him again. And having sold him to the Ishmaelites and then him being carried off and everything, they had every reason. They had some reasons, or a number of reasons, as to why they said he was dead. Right? Shuv lo haya batuach. But in this case, Joseph could no longer be certain, lamasha amru, that they also had said to him ad ko, up to this point, she'avihim odenu chai. They also said to him, of course, that their father was still alive. Why? Why might he still doubt them as to the veracity of that statement? I mean, let's be honest about it. Once someone lies to you over something, then it's possible that they're going to lie to you about anything, right? And that's what he's saying right now. But there's an additional level, she'ulai haya lahem tam gam bazeh, that there might have been another rationale, that they might have had a reason for lying to him about their dad, and that he wasn't really alive. Why would they say that he was still alive? Ulai kedei she'orer Yosef rachamim al ziknato. Remember, they didn't know they were talking to the viceroy of Egypt, and they were hoping that possibly he would have a sense of mercy because of his age, because of their aged father, or tam acher, or possibly some other reason. V'lachein ata v'hitvado she'elam alav. And that's why when he, v'hitvadu she'elam alav she'agidu emet. So, behitvad or. And so consequently, when he revealed his identity to them, he asked them alav regarding alav about him, meaning Jacob, she'agidu emet, that they should tell him the truth. So here we are. This is as far as I'm going to go now, although this is a brief, very short little thing here. So maybe since we have a few minutes, let me go ahead and do this, right? Okay. Einechem. So he goes on and he says, Einechem, your eyes, etc. And then let's find the verse, right? Here we go. Einechem ro'ot, your eyes see, ve'enei achi v'yamin, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, ki fi hamidaber alechem, that it is my mouth that is speaking to you. In other words, that I am Joseph, right? But the question now is, what's behind this? Why does he say your eyes, and then he separates eyes, his brother Benjamin? Why does he do that? And that's what we're looking at. Mahu einechem ve'enei achi Benjamin. What do we mean by saying your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin? Amar Rabbi Elazar, said Rabbi Elazar, Amar lahem, he said to them, Joseph said to them, Keshem she'ein belibi al Binyamin, just as I have nothing against Benjamin, shelo habaya bevichirati, because he wasn't involved in my sale, kach ein belibi alechem, so there is nothing in my heart against you. And this is taken from Megillah, Tractate Megillah, page, it looks like page 16b. Well, even before we go into this, so let's just do this, but I have to tell you, when I come across stuff like this, it blows my mind as to how brilliant these people are, and thank God it's preserved, that we have this preserved. Ni'eh pashut de midayek. It seems quite clear, it's straightforward. The midayek mashahutzi ra'ayat biyamin. The reason, right? The fact that he specifies the fact that he accepts that Benjamin, what Benjamin is seeing, or seeing Benjamin miklal ra'ayat kolachim, from how he looks at the rest of the brothers. And the reason obviously is exactly what Rabbi Elazar is pulling out, that he had nothing against them, that he wanted them to know, of course, because that would be in their minds, right? And here he was, Viceroy of Egypt, and if he wanted to take revenge, he was certainly in a position to take revenge. And this statement is saying, no, I have nothing against you at all. So this is where I'm going to stop. So, all right, I'm going to stop the share. And if there are any comments before we move on. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.